Yucaipa City Council meeting, June 8th at approximately 6 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order. Captain Williams, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, if you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is Mr. Riddell here?
I'm here.
He heard me.
Okay, Jennifer, will you please call roll?
Councilmember Riddell.
Here.
Councilmember Bogue.
Here.
Councilmember Duncan.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen.
Present.
Mayor Avila.
Here. Thank you. We'll go to the next item on the agenda. Mr. Casey, are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, staff would respectfully request that council consider, number one, whether there is a need to hear the closed session item this evening. It is an opportunity to discuss the general unit item that is on open session, but given the time period in the year, we hadn't taken that step, so council would have that opportunity in closed session. And then secondarily, whether you wish to hear that first or next prior to public comment this evening.
And that item would be in open session, item number?
Be the first item in open session prior to consent, prior to public comment. So it would be prior to any of the other department reports or consent. I guess would be item number 1. Item number 0.5. How's that? 0.5.
So
Okay.
to clarify, you want to move item number 5 to the first thing we do?
No, it would actually be, I'm sorry, the closed session item, the only closed session item on the agenda this evening, to the first item on the agenda that you haven't already done, the roll call and the pledge. So
Oh, I see. Move closed
it
session
would
to the very
be item
beginning.
0.5,
All righty.
if
Okay.
you so choose.
All right. Do we want to move, anyone want to make a motion to move the closed session item to the front of our meeting? That way we can talk about it and discuss results in the public hearing or in the public meeting?
We'll give you the opportunity to discuss the items that are included in that proposal. And just for the benefit of the council, those are the same items that are in the mid-managers and supervisory proposal.
I think we should do that very quickly. I think that would be a good move for us to do. So I would motion that we do that, and then we move closed session to this moment.
A second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Any discussion on this? All right, Jennifer, let's see, ask the city attorney, Snow, to announce the closed session item. David, can you hear me?
I can, and I will do that in just one moment. So the City Council will adjourn into closed session. It's one item on the closed session agenda. It's conference with labor negotiator. And the negotiator is Mr. Casey, and under discussion is the Yucaipa City Employees Association. Unclear whether there will be reportable action or not. I would think not.
Okay, that's closed session item now. Now that we know, we'll have a motion to move it to closed session. We had a second. Jennifer, now, will you take the roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Riddell.
Aye.
Councilmember Bogue.
Aye.
Councilmember Duncan.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen.
Aye.
Mayor Avila.
Yes. Okay, for the benefit of the public, we are going to move to closed session right now, and we should be muted. Greg, if you go ahead and mute us and let us know when that occurs. public session now. I believe there is one more request to modify the agenda. Mr. Casey?
I'm sorry, I just learned that those parents left and the Youth Advisory Committee left. They'll be
Okay.
back, assuming that public comment would take some time.
We'll revise the revision. Okay, let's see now. We're reconvening City Council. Right now, it's time for employee introduction. Who would like to introduce our latest employee?
That will be Assistant City Manager Jennifer Crawford.
I'm the short one. Thank you, Council. Tonight, I'd like to introduce to you Ryan Blackerby. He's the new finance manager here at the City of Yucaipa. Ryan started here on May 19th, and in a short amount of time he's been here, he's been very busy learning our processes and procedures, assisting and addressing the catch-up items as detailed in agenda number 8, and working with staff to move from this most recent pandemic that we've been in. Ryan has a bachelor's degree in business management and a master's degree in finance. Since 2014, Ryan has worked with the City of Modesto as a financial analyst, and in 2017 was promoted to a senior financial analyst. Ryan and his family left Modesto to be closer to his family in the Inland Empire, which was a big loss to the City of Modesto when I talked to the Director of Finance there when I was checking his references. Ryan's mother, Deborah, lives here in Yucaipa and has since 2004. Ryan and his wife, Miriam, have been married for 10 years, and they got hitched here in Yucaipa. They have a 9-year-old son named Marcus and a 7-year-old daughter named Isabella. Miriam and the kids are currently in Vermont visiting her sister, or they would have been here this evening supporting their dad and husband, Ryan. I would also like to note that Miriam has a bachelor's degree in management and an MBA in finance, and she will also be looking for employment in the area when she returns from Vermont. Ryan and his family do love to travel. They go abroad. Recently, they went to Peru, Chile, and Costa Rica. So I bet he's dreaming about these moments right now. On behalf of the Finance Department and the city, we are so happy to have Ryan join our team. Please welcome Ryan Blackerby.
Would you like to say a few words, please?
I'd just like to say thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. My family and I are excited to be back in the Yucaipa area. And the city of Yucaipa definitely holds a special place in our hearts for the reasons that Jennifer mentioned. And so it's definitely an honor to be back here working for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we'd like to have our picture taken with you, so please come up here.
Who's going to read the ones that were mailed in? The comments that were mailed?
Okay, we're moving on to the next item on the agenda, and that would be public comment. I'd like to remind everybody that we want to make sure we keep a civil tone, and if there's any applause, please hold your applause until the end, when it's all done. We're going to change it up a little bit due to the number of speakers. We're going to have a 2-minute limit. I understand there's going to be one person, Eric Welsh, who wants to speak on behalf of a number of people, and he will be allotted 14 minutes. If you have any comments, and if you haven't signed up yet, there's a speaker slip on the table. You can give it to Jennifer. If you have something specific you want to talk about, like an item on the agenda, please make sure that you mark the appropriate box. And if you just have a general comment, please mark the appropriate box for that. So we're going to start off with Eric Welsh on behalf of Michael Cox, William Peters, Carlos Vallejo, Lee Caberlin, Dwayne Austin, Jackie Martinez, and Corey Martinez. Mr. Welsh. I'm sorry, what?
Call it in the queue, in the wait, say who's next.
Right here?
Yes, sir.
One moment, please.
And while you're digging up your message, I'd like to call Benjamin Vargas. Are we allowed to do that at this point, or is it too crowded? Okay, Benjamin Vargas, Derek Rose, and Grace McCoy. You're in the batter's box. Please come forward.
Yep. Hello, everybody. My name is Eric Welsh. I have a business in this town. It's right next door to Yucaipa, Copper Kettle, Yucaipa Bike Center, and then it's my business. We're engineers and land surveyors. We've been in business for 45 years, and we came up here we grew up in this town. My dad grew up in this town. I grew up in this town. And 5 years ago, we moved our business up to this town because we still lived here, because it was safer, and we like it this way. So there was a credible threat starting on Sunday afternoon against Copper Kettle Cafe. They're friends of ours. It's basically women over there that are, cooking breakfast and baking. They have no way to defend themselves personally. And them being attached to my business, I thought I should stand around and be there for them. The police, they showed up in the morning, and then that was it. Okay, and I know that there's a lot of good deputies that came out and were around, but I know that there's some people in this room that are sitting in front of me that tied their hands. I know that they can't sit there and watch one building all day long, but when there's a threat to a certain building for a certain reason, you think that would happen. So instead, other people stood in front of that building, including myself. Now, there is no representation of the city there. No one from our district was there. So we had Mr. Duncan came by to see how we were doing, and he asked us to not act a certain way and do certain things. And he was not in control of other things that happened, nor was I in control of some things that happened on Monday. But we all need to remember that on Monday, there was a felon that got arrested with a firearm that was not on our side. Okay, you guys hear me? A felon with a firearm that was not on our side, okay? No one on our side got arrested. No one got our side was brandishing firearms. There's people on the roof up above town, but it was not illegal. Okay, we're protecting our private property. Nobody's threatening anybody. Now, where there's a 60-year-old man, after the threat of burning down the gas station in my business, a 60-year-old man was videotaping, and he got punched in the face. Okay, 60-year-old man. That's when the fights started happening. And in those fights, there was knives, sharpened sticks, and one knife was about this big that we took off of a guy. Okay, the city wants to then vilify actions of certain people, and it's wrong. Who was there to protect us? Okay, you guys will put a deputy will sit on our crowd, and as long as we were there, but as soon as we would leave, the deputy would leave. It doesn't make any sense. You're paying overtime for this deputy. The city's spending a lot of money. Why wouldn't anyone just say, hey, go home. We will protect your business. He's going to be here anyway. Instead, we have to sit out there, and then everyone wants to be against us. Okay. Now, I wanted to let you know that no matter anyone around here that is against us, they think they're against us. It has nothing to do with race, religion, politics. It's going to turn political, but that's not what it's about. It's about protecting businesses. And I really think that people need to wake up and get away from this political agenda. Without having to say the right words, but it's BS. So I got a couple more notes here for you guys. I'm sorry. With all this, emotions run high. So I'm sure that I went over most of the bullet points that I wanted to talk with, but what I wanted to do was remind the city council that there's a growing Facebook page called Yucaipa Strong, and it's more than 6,000 members that live in this city, and it's growing, 6,000 in 1 week. Okay, and some of you on November 3rd are up for re-election, and some of you are not backing us up. So we want you to know that these same members that in this growing group are not going to be on your side, just like you aren't on our side. So I think you guys need to really think about that and think about who you're representing. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, and any of my time left, I'd like to give to my father, Paul Welsh.
Okay. Before, Mr. Welsh, I'd like to talk to you. We need to schedule a meeting one day, just you and I sit down and talk. I really would like to hear what you have to say. I know you have more to say. I appreciate it. So is it appropriate to ask the Father Walsh to come in and speak for the rest of the time?
That's
on the list.
that's the option of the chair.
Someone help me.
Yeah, it's the option of the chair. He's
Okay.
right here.
Okay.
Yes.
He's fourth on the list.
My name's Paul Welsh. I'm one of the owners of Massaro and Welsh. We're civil engineers and land surveyors. And I want to thank the City of Yucaipa Mayor, City Council, and the staff for giving us the opportunity to speak on a subject matter that is of great concern to me and the citizens of Yucaipa. A little of my background: I've been in the Yucaipa area since the late 50s. My parents were local school teachers in the area. I graduated from Yucaipa High School along with my two brothers. My three children grew up here also in the Yucaipa schools. I grew up loving the small community of Yucaipa and the closeness of all the residents. The city has always had that small town feeling. I had a civil engineering and land surveying firm in the city of San Bernardino near the intersection of Waterman Avenue and 16th, just down the street from St. Bernardine's Hospital. I had purchased the building consisting of 13 offices. My firm was there for 40 years, starting back in the year 1974. Everything was great for the first few years. Then little by little, the street gangs took over and there was total mayhem. Break-ins, constructions, destructions of the 13 offices, graffiti all over the buildings. There were rape and molestations of young ladies that were working in the offices. 6 years ago, a murder was committed on Easter Sunday morning on our front lawn of our building on Waterman Avenue. That was the time for us to leave. We sold the building at a financial loss and moved to our present location, which is right there at the bike shop and the Copper Kettle. Everything has been just awesome up to this last week. We love Yucaipa. We are business people. The owner from the Copper Kettle and I had a conversation about the threats that they had received on their building. People are calling up on the restaurant phone and they say they want to burn the building down. They want to lynch the owners. They want to hang them. The background on the Copper Kettle Cafe is because the initials are KKK. And these agitators and phone callers believe that they are the headquarters for the Ku Klux Klan of Southern California. And this has been going on for quite a few years. Most of the kitchen help are Hispanic, along with some of the waitresses are Hispanic. There is no racism here. Just little old ladies baking cookies and pies and serving a great breakfast and lunch. These ladies are scared to death and have great fear for their lives. I told the owners that we would do our darnest to keep the building from burning and looting. We are not against anybody from protesting their civil rights. We just want to stop anybody from looting and burning down the Copper Kettle Cafe building, along with the bike shop and our civil engineering office. The word was out that they want to break all of the businesses' windows all along Yucaipa Boulevard and California Street and loot and destroy and burn the town down. That's why a lot of businesses boarded up all their windows with plywood. I hope this information shows another light on the real situation that is going on in our city of Yucaipa. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you, Mr. Welsh. Okay, next is Benjamin Vargas. Benjamin, you have 2 minutes. Please give us your name, full name again, and your address.
Well, I'd rather not give my address because I've already had people threaten me on social media. So I live in Yucaipa. I've lived here for about over 15 years, but I'm not going to give my address.
I understand.
If that's okay with you. Thank you. Hello, my name's Benjamin Vargas. I've been a resident of Yucaipa for about 15 years, and I've always taken pride in living in this city. In that time, I've volunteered hundreds of hours coaching youth sports, leading Cub Scouts, volunteering at my kids' schools, and working to help provide charity for needy people in this town. I say that not for praise, but because I want you to understand that I'm not just a bystander, but an active participant in this city, and I want what's best for all residents of this city. What I witnessed last week, beginning on Monday night, for the first time made me ashamed to be a resident of this city. What I happened to see, because I was attempting to drive up the boulevard to get dinner for my family, was appalling and honestly terrifying. When I drove past a crowd of people, some of whom were armed, yelling obscenities such as the N-word and things like, "Get out of Yucaipa, you don't belong here," "White Lives Matter," and way worse than that, I couldn't believe what was happening. I felt like I'd been transported to Alabama or Mississippi circa 1968, watching crowds of white people bully black peaceful protesters. Myself and others asked the YPD to intervene, but it appears that nothing happened at that time. And as a consequence of this inaction, the mob became violent and people were beat up, and a large group of people who didn't agree with their Black Lives Matter message committed violence with these folks that were protesting. So I ask you, is it your intention as representatives of all citizens of this city to ignore what happened? Is it your intention to have Yucaipa represented by vigilantes carrying weapons that intimidate anybody who has a different opinion than them? You're elected and the police are hired to uphold the rule of law for all citizens of Yucaipa, regardless of their race, religion, sexual orientation, gender, or political beliefs, even if those beliefs run counter to yours. This is your duty as city council, and this is your duty as a police department. We ask that you take that duty seriously and take your responsibility as city leaders seriously.
Please wrap up your statement.
Okay? Martin Luther King said, "In the end, we'll remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends." So I ask you, will your inaction with these events represent that silence that Martin Luther King spoke of?
Thank you. Okay, we have next is Tulsi Patel, Derek Rose. Okay, remember you have 2 minutes.
Good evening, Yucaipa City Council. Last Thursday, a team and I wrote a letter to Yucaipa leadership mandating that they actively counteract injustice in our country. We released that open letter to collect signatures, and within 3 days, it was signed by 487 people of all ages and backgrounds, from retired military to teachers to city workers. The letter is still currently being signed, so those numbers have increased. 13 local businesses also signed the letter in support. Along with those signatures were around 100 personal testimonies or comments to support the letter. Each council member has received an email with the letter, signatures, and anonymized comments. And as officials, we hope you thoroughly read through everything. Derek Rose will now read a portion of that letter.
Mayor Avila, thank you for this opportunity to speak. I understand that you don't want backlash from community members if you take a stance that they may not agree with. But the safety of all of your citizens is of the utmost priority, particularly Black lives. This is not a partisan issue. Whether you're liberal or conservative, it is your duty to explicitly address the three following issues. First, please condemn the actions that have occurred on June 1st properly. We are asking that you release a statement declaring that the people that were attacked were not Antifa and they had no intentions of looting. Additionally, for the safety of the community, please emphasize California gun laws to all citizens. 2, make a clear and definitive stance against racism. The euphemisms regarding injustice in this country are vague and they do not clearly condemn racism in this city. And 3rd, commit to a comprehensive plan to actively fight racism in our community to promote a more inclusive and safe environment for everyone. I grew up here in Yucaipa. I went to Yucaipa High School. In fact, I earned the President's Award at Crafton Hills College. I love this town, but we can do better.
Thank you. Okay, the next is Grace McCrae. I'm sorry. And then the next three people on the box is Rebecca Reyes, Gina Porter, and Ariana Hun, if they can come into the room.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak. As I said before, my name is Grace McCrae, and I was one of the minority citizens of Yucaipa who was moved by the letter that Tulsi and Derek just mentioned, and I made a response of my own. As mentioned before, there are hundreds of responses, 80 or so of which are written responses to the letter. We found that it might be progressive to read a few of these entries out loud, all of which you can find on the documents that were sent to you, of the Yucaipan citizens who wish to express their worries to the local government. So I would like to read, quote, I am a young African-American woman living in Yucaipa. I've been here for over 10 years and I've never felt completely safe. I know that there are people in this town who would go out of their way to find a reason to harm me and my family and friends. That should not be endorsed in any town, in any country, or in any human mind. It is unacceptable to let any discriminatory action go uncorrected. I love this town. I grew up here too. I am an alumni, and the beauty that it possesses. And yet, the shadow of bigotry has loomed over me my whole life as a citizen of Yucaipa and as a citizen of America. However, we can try to combat this hatred by spreading love and understanding to the people of all dynamics, and by holding those who show and use unnecessary violence, be it verbal or otherwise, accountable. And you have failed to do so in this instance. Nevertheless, we will not be silent. We will use our voices, and we will make a change for the better. And I hope that Yucaipa will be behind us when we do it. Unquote, from me, citizen of Yucaipa, Grace McCrae. Now, that's just one of the responses that we obtained. Obviously, it's mine. We felt it necessary to share at least one to display that many of the people of Yucaipa, specifically minorities, felt as though that they are in danger. We depend on the local government to protect our rights and the well-being of all of its citizens. And due to the inadequate response from our local government, anxieties are boiling up rapidly. And so we ask you, the government of Yucaipa, to consider the contents of this letter and to take action. Thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca Reyes.
Good evening, thank you. My name is Rebecca Reyes. I'm a citizen of Yucaipa. I grew up here. I moved here when I was 3 years old. I graduated from the class of 1989. I know Mr. Duncan's son. He went to the same class as my brother, Stephen DeYoung. I love the environment of this city. I left for 20 years and I came back 10 years ago with my family, bought a home, and I'm not leaving. I've never been more disenchanted and disheartened by the activities that occurred on June 1st here in this town. I'm a white girl. I'm a poster child white. I got blue eyes. I used to have blonde hair. And I don't feel safe here. I don't feel safe to speak my mind. I don't feel safe to be an inclusionary person. I don't feel safe to support Black Lives Matter. And do you know why we need Black Lives Matter here in this town and in the country? Because Black lives don't matter in this country. And yes, all lives do matter. We know this. We're not saying Black Lives Matter is not a movement that says only Black Lives Matter. We need Black Lives Matter movement because Black lives don't matter in America. And the recent tensions because of the George Floyd murder has shed huge light on the institutionalized racism that's in the whole country. And it's an underbelly that's been here for 400 years. And it's time for change. We're pregnant for change, and I'm hopeful. So that being said, it's a lot to uncover, but I would like to maybe make an appointment and talk to one of you who's in charge of the sheriff's departments. It is my greatest fear that we have another George Floyd right here in town, and something terrible happens. What is our de-escalation policy? What are our limitations? How are we trained? Do we have racial sensitivity training for our police force? Are there guidelines? Who does it? And who is in charge of deciding? Is that it?
Please wrap it up.
Yes, sir. I would like to invite any meeting with any one of you regarding these matters so that I can share information and understand our sheriffs and how they're trained on these issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Gina Porter.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. My name is Gina Porter. I've lived in Yucaipa for 15 years. And I'm here tonight to express my concerns about recent actions that were taken by a group of residents in the Uptown area last week. Like many in our community, I saw various videos on social media of armed men on rooftops, lining the sidewalks, drinking, intimidating, harassing, and ultimately assaulting a small group of people believed to be in the city to protest the murder of George Floyd. State law specifically prohibits, and this is a quote, any person from carrying an exposed and unloaded handgun upon his or her person outside of a vehicle in a public place, and also, quote, prohibits the carrying in public outside of a vehicle and on or about one's person of an unloaded long gun in any incorporated city or county. Violating this law is a misdemeanor and is punishable by up to a year in county jail or a $1,000 fine. Among those seen in some of the pictures and videos posted on social media is one that several longtime residents have identified as Councilmember Bobby Duncan. What happened here last week is both embarrassing and terrifying. I am a white, heterosexual, Christian female, and I am scared by what I saw happen here last week. I am terrified by what happened here last week. For my safety, for the safety of my children, for the safety of my church community members, by the safety of my neighbors, their children, the students here, Black people, brown people, people of all persuasions, everyone. If Yucaipa is to be safe, city officials and law enforcement cannot allow armed vigilantes to terrorize our streets under the guise of protecting the city's businesses. For the safety of our citizens and to avoid further damage to the reputation of our city, those who can be identified, excuse me, can I wrap up?
Go ahead and wrap it up.
Through videos and pictures on social media should be fined and or arrested for violating state law. Furthermore, if I have heard, Councilman Duncan was in fact one of the armed men stationed outside a city business last week. He should do the right thing, follow the lead of Temecula Mayor James Stewart, and resign from his post. Thank you.
Ariana Hun. And the next three up in the box is Sarah Brook, Eric Candife of Calamasa, and Marion Lovelace.
Mr. Mayor, you responded to events that took place on the night of Monday, June 1st with the words, Yucaipa, you are better than this. I have come here this evening to implore you to address the fact that we are not. We are not better than this in Yucaipa, and it's your duty and your responsibility to change that. Business districts in Yucaipa are forming private militias, willing to protect property from anticipated looters, property that can be replaced. But they're not willing to acknowledge the legitimacy of calls to recognize the sanctity of Black lives, which are irreplaceable. These neighborhood vigilantes are being celebrated by your citizens, held up as heroes, and the manifestation of Yucaipa's spirit. This spirit, it's fueled by a perceived birthright to be above the law, and an insistence that people of color and principles of equality are not welcomed in this town. Your citizens, Mayor, are rapidly joining social media groups that are calling for the start of a civil war to defend systemic racism. What this town needs from you in this moment is not complacency. We need your solidarity in the fight for social justice. This does not mean simply stating your support for the rights of protesters and counter-protesters to demonstrate as you did in your last address. With all due respect, we do not need you to confirm our freedoms of lawful assembly. We need you to call for changes to the status quo. We need you to denounce not only the violence of a few individuals, but also racism and white supremacy. We need you to go out and listen to what protesters have to say, rather than waiting for them to come to you. We need you to call for the resignation of Representative Duncan for his violation of the Yucaipa City Council Code of Conduct. And we need you to find funding for a chief equity, inclusion, and diversity officer to help diffuse tensions and guide action. If you are thinking to yourself that you could not possibly do these things because the people of Yucaipa would throw you out of office, then I submit to you that this is precisely my point about our city not being better than this. And if you are thinking to yourself that you could not possibly do these things because you yourself do not support social justice, because you do not believe that Black lives matter, then I respectfully suggest to you that we can do better than this in Yucaipa, better than you as our mayor. We do not need pandering in this moment. We do not need empty gestures. We need the leadership of a city council that is willing to take concrete actions to change the dominant and dominative culture in this town. And we need a mayor with the strength and character to do the right thing. Mr. Mayor, listen to your own advice and do better. Thank you.
Okay, Sarah Brook. Are you Eric? I am. You're next.
Hello, I'm a resident of Riverside County. Can you hear me? I'm short.
There you go, thank you.
A little bit closer. I just heard a lot. I'm a resident of Riverside County, and over the weekend, I saw a lot of videos on social media with a lot of violence that's happening here in Yucaipa. And I was a chaplain at my Christian college, and I would just like to say that right behind you, you have In God We Trust. And the Lord calls for you, gentlemen and ma'am, to stand in righteousness and justice and truth and to uphold peace in our nation. We have an epidemic of hatred in our nation at this moment that people are rising up against and saying we need change. You can be that agent of change. You have that power. You have that power in this city to make a stand. I heard a gentleman say there's 6,000 of us and we will vote. You know what? There's 53,000 people in this city that will also vote. So you need to decide in your heart. You need, when you're praying to God for discernment, for wisdom, for guidance, for understanding, search your heart. Search your heart. Is there hatred in your own hearts? Is there love of justice, of truth, of peace? Are those the kind of people that you are? Who are you? What do you stand for? What do you stand for? Are you okay with people carrying guns and threatening people? Is that okay because we're protecting our businesses? Is that acceptable to you? Do you smile at it? Do you think it's funny? Are you proud of that? That's my question to you. What kind of leaders will you be in this nation. You've been elected by the people of this good city. Who are you going to be? Where will you be in this fight for justice? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Eric, you're up.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, my name is Eric Cundiff, and that's spelled C-U-N-D-I-E-F-F. I moved to Yucaipa in 1987 with my family and grew up here. I'm currently a resident of Calamasa, but I did share a career in the Sheriff's Department and for San Bernardino County, so I wanted to have some words heard this evening. I served our country in the Navy for 7 years, and then our county of San Bernardino as a deputy for 10 years until I medically retired. I'm here to voice my support to our brave men and women serving Yucaipa with the Sheriff's Department. I'm also here to voice my support of Councilman Bob Duncan's actions the night he took to the streets of Yucaipa with several other Yucaipians to protect their businesses and the people of this town against any rioters or criminals looking to victimize Yucaipa. Yucaipa was not going to fall victim the way San Bernardino and other cities did. The actions of Yucaipa citizens to protect their businesses and property is not a racist act. It's an act that aligns itself with their Declaration of Independence, our constitutional rights, and our amendments, which our country and our way of life is protected by. Every one of you, along with us in law enforcement, or those that are still serving in law enforcement, swore an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution against enemies, foreign and domestic, that you would bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution. A domestic enemy, this is what the mobs breaking the law by rioting, looting, and hurting people are. They're not acting in peaceful protest. Their actions showed that. They're criminals. Do not confuse peaceful protests with criminals. And do not confuse the good citizens in your town as racist because they want to protect their businesses and property. I will tell you also that in the 10 years that I was fortunate enough to serve as a deputy sheriff, the men and women that serve your community and the county of this San Bernardino are some of the best men and women that I've ever had the opportunity to work with. They put their lives on the line every day to protect the people that are ungrateful and the people that are grateful. And they don't care whether you're a Democrat or Republican or liberal or conservative. They're going to do what they have to do because that's what the law says. And for that, I'm grateful, Captain, Lieutenant, for your guys' jobs that you're doing and for the men and women that are serving your community. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Marianne Lovelace. On deck is Larry Turner, Brenda Abraham, and Elizabeth Folino.
Okay. My name's Marian Lovelace. I live on Acacia Avenue in Yucaipa. Have been here since 1954, went all the way through school here. We have seen some times, we lived through the Watts riots, we lived through the Rodney King riots, but the other night was an exception to the normal for our town. We had credible threats that we had never received before. And then in light of what happened in San Bernardino Sunday night, yeah, we were on edge. And our businesses that have been, so many of them closed for a couple of months, were just opening up, getting back into business. And I would like to thank Councilman Duncan, my cousin, the Turners, and all the other people that came out to guard them. Yes, there were a few errors of their ways that night. Drinking in public is not acceptable. We're not an open carry state, but I do want to thank the Yucaipa Police Department for taking the time to remind and re-educate the people on these issues and not arrest them. They were doing what Yucaipa does, protect their own. We're not a racist town. People say we have the Klan up here. I've been here for a long time and never knew of it. They say we have white supremacists. I've never heard of them. So I don't know where all that's coming from, but for those that were out last Monday night protecting our businesses and living just a few blocks off the area. Thank you for protecting my home as well. And I wouldn't have had it any other way. I think that's how we are here. Yes, it got a little strange. It was not normal. But the year 2020 has not been normal. But I think we can grow from this, learn from this, and it has shown that we will protect our own.
Can we wrap it up, please?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Larry Turner.
Yes, sir. I would like to thank the City Council and all the employees for allowing us to speak. It appears that some of the people believe that myself and others were presenting a show of too much force in this last Monday night. I disagree. We may never know if our presence deterred the protesters and looters, but we can guarantee that their threats to destroy the white Trump-loving Yucaipa would not happen. Standing guard up and down the boulevard, there was no looting, no riots, only 2 fist fights, and I'd say we made the point that citizens of Yucaipa would not stand for it. I have lived in Yucaipa over 70 years. My store was built 61 years ago by my father and grandfather. There is no way that I'd let criminals destroy it over something like Black Lives Matter. And I have to agree, all lives matter. But that's not a reason to destroy someone's livelihood, their keepsakes, their whole present position in life. I have to ask those that don't think that we should have, if their grandma had lived in the same house for 60 years and they were threatened to burn it to the ground, what would they do? Would they protect it or would they watch it burn? If you call the police, they are only minutes away. Most threats require an immediate response. We property and business owners with our friends did not take to arms without careful thought as to the consequences of our actions should we fire a shot. And I'll wind it up right here. We were willing to stand our ground, protect the community from domestic enemies. Remember, peaceful assembly is in the Constitution, rioting isn't. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Brenda, and you have to help me with your last name. I apologize.
Ibrahim.
Thank you.
Gaslighting is a psychological tactic favored by abusers that attempts to fool someone into questioning what they've seen with their very own eyes. Yucaipa's leadership is actively gaslighting the city's residents regarding a photo that is currently being circulated on social media. This photo shows a council member, Bobby Duncan, sitting within arm's reach of an unattended firearm, propped in a chair outside of Yucaipa Bar during a supposed city crisis. As we all know, California is not an open carry state. We also know that there was never any credible threat to this city. Social media fueled hysteria was not only allowed to continue unchecked, but was actually encouraged by those participating in the supposed protection of the boulevard. We are now being told that Bobby Duncan was not actually the owner of that firearm. Are we supposed to believe that a staunch supporter of the Second Amendment and someone willing to take up arms in a crisis as a protector doesn't know that his actions were illegal and dangerous? It's been reported that YPD asked that the gun be put away, and Councilmember Duncan complied. This either implies consciousness of guilt or a man who is quick to abandon his convictions. Councilman Duncan's actions during a time that required level-headedness and decency fell well below what is expected of a man charged with his responsibilities. Councilman Duncan should resign immediately. He has proven through his lack of decorum and embrace of vigilantism that he is unfit to represent the people of Yucaipa.
Thank you. Okay, Elizabeth Folino, and we have Ken McIntyre, Chris Markarian, and Brianna Damon up on deck.
My name is Elizabeth Folino. I'm a resident of Yucaipa. Thank you for letting me speak today. First, I'd like to read a letter that was posted by Mary Birmingham Winter to the Yucaipa Police Department's Facebook post on June 6th. She says, "It would go a long way if you could admit you didn't handle the June 1st protest right and condemn the armed vigilante mob you've now emboldened that think they can and will do your jobs for you. You proclaim you're there for everyone, always, but you know in your heart of hearts that's not true. I've seen it so many times with the homeless, and now I've seen it with the protesters. There is racism in your department, and it is greatly affecting this community in a negative way. Please do better. Please enact better policing policies. Please live up to these high ideals you've posted. We know you're people with feelings, families, and lives outside of the uniform. Please don't let those influence your actions in the uniform. We don't want harm to come to you, and we know you sacrifice a lot, have to be part of people's worst days of their lives and see ungodly things, all while feeling in danger every day. This job you've accepted is a higher calling, and not everyone can do it. You're special and appreciated, and also flawed like the rest of us. But you've chosen this life, and with it comes a grave and mighty responsibility. Mistakes will be made, and I'm sorry goes a long way for those who have been a part of those mistakes, both small and heinous. Justice needs to happen for the attack victims, taking responsibility for failed policing that night and a vow with a plan to do better going forward. Please. Thank you for your service and all the good things you do." I would like to say, I had more remarks, but you cut the time. I was terrified on June 1st, not from any phantom looters, from some unverified threat that our own police department said was not a threat. I was afraid of the people running around with guns in my neighborhood, and I want you to condemn it and do something to fix it.
Thank you. Ken McIntyre.
I didn't go to school here. I came here in 71, so I'm the new kid on the block. I came here in 1971, and I thank you for letting us speak to you today. And I want to commend you, Mr. Duncan, for your courage in exercising our constitutional rights. And I want to commend you for your courage of standing in the light of all of this tonight. It seems that we have become a society of self-righteous wokeness. And if we scream loud enough, we get our own way. But if they proceed with having you resign, they're denying you of your constitutional rights. And they're denying you of due process.
Thank you. Chris Markarian. You have 2 minutes, Chris.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, esteemed council members. So Chris Markarian, I live in Yucaipa, and most of you know me. Just 2 minutes is very tight, so I'll run through this. I think it's a great day to celebrate today. I know a lot of people are upset. I've never met this Eric Welsh guy that spoke or his dad, but I guarantee you I love what the young lady Patel and the gentleman came up and spoke about their letter. I guarantee you if we put them together, we would stand all together and protest injustice. I don't think anyone here is saying that black lives don't matter. I haven't heard one say that yet. It's a sad day in American history, what happened to George Floyd. I'm a refugee from Iraq, most of you know. I'm not a minority, I'm a rarity. I'm the only Armenian in town, as far as I know. And I love my town, I love our department, I love our city. I am not naive enough to say no racism exists in Yucaipa. Some of us are racist. Everyone is racist at one level or another. But when people act on it, something needs to be done about it. I was also surprised when I was driving around and a friend of mine called me that owns a liquor store in town and said, hey, if you don't mind coming and standing by us. And obviously I rushed to go and stand and help out in every way I can, including carrying a gun and going and protecting his livelihood. When I came back to Yucaipa Boulevard, and I have a license to carry, so when I came back to the boulevard, I crossed the street to go to the Arco side of protesters, shook their hands, and stood with them. Unfortunately, I didn't witness any of the injustice and the fighting that ensued afterwards. Last words for Bobby Duncan. So I've come here, unfortunately, to defend this man 3 times. Once, when he voted against the sex offenders registry. Once, when he posted Facebook stuff and he expressed his views. And now again for exercising his Second Amendment rights. So it's not about Bobby Duncan. It's about the things he did and the things that people are against him doing. And I'm here to stand with anyone, whether it's Bobby Duncan or not, color, race, or religion. We are Yucaipa strong and we all stand together.
Thank you. Brianna? And I apologize if I slaughtered your last name.
It's okay, everybody does. Hi, my name is Brianna Dahman. I'm 29 years old. I've lived in Yucaipa for about 6 years, and I love this loving, diverse town. I was raised in motel rooms and in ghettos by a crystal meth-using mother, and then I was given over to an abusive father. I promise I'm making a point. Hurt people hurt people. I was denied financial assistance through schooling because I was not considered a minority, and my disassociated parents made too much money for me to qualify. So, I paid for my own schooling. I paid to open my own business without any funding or assistance. I worked 2 jobs while going to school. After making minimum wage and shamefully was once atheist, I decided to read more. I learned more about what made success so hard. I changed who I associated with and surrounded myself with good people of all ethnicities. There's no racial privilege for me, but I'm still not a victim. We're all given the same abilities, and we have choices, and we are a direct result of our decisions, not a victim of our childhood. I agree that racism is very real on both sides. There's good and bad people in every profession, race, and ethnicity. All those people, as individuals, need to be addressed appropriately. But destroying things and name-calling on both sides won't change people's perspectives on either side. It's only reaffirming them. People need to talk more, and more importantly, people need to listen. I want change for people. I want better for our communities. Blacks, white, Puerto Rican, Asian, I don't care. I just want better for you and our community. Historically, guns have stopped tyranny, saved lives, and kept crime rates low. Statistically, areas with the most extreme gun control have the highest crime rates. Look at Chicago. And the places with the most lenient gun control have the lowest crime rates. Look at Arizona. Businesses have a right to defend themselves and their property and their livelihoods. Have you ever heard of a gun store getting robbed? People are going to question their actions when a weapon is in front of them. I've never been more proud or felt more safe than this last weekend. Although there were guns in the city of Yucaipa the other night, there weren't any gunshots, there also weren't any fires, looting, or riots. This BLM movement has nothing to do with our Second Amendment rights, and the citizens of this town did nothing wrong by showing the rest of this country what they all should have been doing. Although the media will show you a one-sided narrative, it's very dangerous. What that video doesn't show is the people who were getting beat up were antagonizing by stealing candy bars from the gas station and throwing water bottles at its citizens.
Please wrap it up.
I will. Every cause has an effect. Every action has a reaction. The most irresponsible thing you can do is allow someone or some TV show to determine your feelings or political religion. If you want to make change, read more, learn more, pay attention to the fine print. You don't have an obligation to the cards you believe you should have been dealt. You have an obligation to play the hell out of the hand you have. An attack on the police is not morally or statistically correct. There are people who go to work to protect all lives. All Black
Stallman,
lives
your
matter.
time is up. I appreciate your comments, but your time is up. Thank you so much.
David Dorn should be addressed. David Dorn.
Okay, I forgot to name the last three: Kevin Bath, William Peters, and Linda Robert Ross. Mr. Bath?
No, he didn't come up.
At this point, doesn't make a difference. Who are you?
I'm William Peters. I was wondering if I can yield my time to Michael Cox.
Yes, that'd be fine. You have a total of 4 minutes.
Thank you, sir. My name is Michael Cox. I've lived here all my life.
I'm sorry, you have 2
old.
minutes.
I'm sorry?
2 minutes.
Yes, thank you. I wasn't planning on speaking, but listening, I have to. It's not about race. It's not about color. It's about our Constitution. It's getting stripped away, and we all know it. Our police even know it. We can't say anything without somebody taking it the other way. That's not right. Were you guys there? Bobby was. Bobby saw the people who were, I want to say it correctly, antagonizing, and everybody here was right. There were bad on both sides. I'm not saying don't protest, but when you come to a city that has nothing to do with it, please, thank you. You have the hardest jobs, and nobody knows how hard their jobs are. I used to do security in the toughest part of San Bernardino, gunshots every night. Young kid out of high school, I had to go get a bulletproof vest. I was told by San Bernardino PD to buy a bulletproof vest. That's how bad it is over there. Not here. But when they said, hey, after we're done with San Bernardino, let's go burn Redlands. Let's go burn Yucaipa. Because there's tons of white people up there. Yeah, there are. You know what? This town has a large group of Christians, atheists, it doesn't matter religion. But we here need to stand up. It is our constitutional right to stand up, to support our police, support our Congress, support everybody here. Bob Duncan, my hat comes off to you too. Sir, you get it from everywhere. Our people are mad, rightfully so. There are bad cops. There are good cops. I'm sorry, my time's up.
Please wrap it up. Go ahead and finish your statement.
Just because there's one bad cop, there's 1,000 more that will save your life. That when somebody's in your house, robbing your building, wherever it is, assaulting you, they're the ones going to take their lives for you. They don't know you, you don't know them, but that's what they're there for, to stand up. And we, as people of the United States, we all need to stand up. Done.
Thank you. Thank you for. William Peters.
He deferred.
Got it. Linda Robert Ross.
Good evening, members of the council. As I think you know, I have a law practice in town in the Uptown. I am coming to you because I think that the black-white equation is not the only equation in town. I have 3 sons. They're all married or about to be to women of color. I have grandchildren who are mixed race. So I have had hard discussions and uncomfortable discussions within my own family about the black-white dichotomy that we seem to be living with in this country anymore. And what it comes down to, and what I would urge you to do, is to facilitate some sort of a forum where people can get together in town and talk about these issues and deal with having the hard conversations that nobody seems to want to have about these things. I understand the business owners wanting to protect their property. Unlike what a lot of people are saying, there's no insurance for civil unrest. If a property or a business is looted, it's probably gone for good. And as much as I was concerned about the hollowing out of our town with the pandemic shutdown and the businesses that weren't going to make it because of it, that could happen overnight had looting and rioting taken place. By the same token, I am a big supporter of the Second Amendment, and I understand the property owners and the business owners wanted to protect them and their property, because if they lose that, they most likely lose pretty much everything. So I'm asking for a conversation. I'm asking for a structure in which we can have these conversations. Yes, racism exists. It doesn't mean that every day, every moment, that we're all running around town thinking about who's not the same color as me. It means that when people are under stress, there are things that happen, things are said, and we've all been under a tremendous amount of stress the entire year so far. I would ask for a commission or an appointment of a panel to have these kinds of issues aired so that we can meet in the middle and learn to understand each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, there's no other comment slips here. We want to make sure that, we need to read, I'm sorry, thank you, Ms. Crawford. She needs to read into the record comments that we received via email or letter.
Are you going to time
Yes,
me?
you have 2 minutes.
Ann Meyer. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Ann Meyer, and I've been a resident of District 5 for over 30 years. The lawless behavior of vigilantes last week has triggered a crisis in our community. The pictures and videos of armed men and women on rooftops, on sidewalks, and parking lot, and rushing into Yucaipa Boulevard are clear evidence of what occurred, and they are now emblazoned into our history, providing proof that racism is alive and well in the city of Yucaipa. While the behavior of out-of-control and violent individuals is shameful and intimidating, the lack of action by the Yucaipa PD is even more staggering to consider. Laws were openly and flagrantly violated for days in a row on the boulevard. A council member who is supposed to be a leader of the community was and is still encouraging and participating in the illegal behavior. Don't tell us it's on private property and nothing can be done. Don't tell us that nothing can be done about people armed with weapons like snipers on rooftops. Officers could have done something about it, however, it appears they just don't want to. Uptown Yucaipa and the many businesses there may not survive its new reputation. Clearly, there are some businesses who really don't care and are, in fact, proud of their ridiculous army hanging around in their parking lot. But council members, what about the rest of the businesses who are just trying to survive? What about all the taxpayer money invested in revitalization? Mayor Avila, I appreciate your sincere efforts to reach out to the community, but we need more from this council, and it starts with transparency and communication. What happened last week was wrong, and it needs to be said out loud so we can try to find a way to heal. The vigilantes who hide their racism behind their toxic false patriotism need to be condemned. There needs to be an impartial investigation to identify not only what happened, but also what must be done to prevent it from happening again. In accordance with the Code of Conduct adopted by Council on August 12, 2019, Bobby Duncan must be formally censored for his public actions and statements which have repeatedly violated the code. To Yucaipa PD, how will you regain the trust of so many like me who no longer feel safe
Please wrap it up.
in the community you took an oath to protect and serve?
Thank you.
J. Brown, PhD. I'm writing to request a formal inquiry into the Yucaipa PD response to the incident that occurred during the evening of June 1st, 2020 on around Yucaipa Boulevard and Councilmember Bobby Duncan's involvement in said incident and make the results publicly available. Next one, Kendall Hogarty. I do not feel safe knowing that Bobby Duncan is a part of our Yucaipa City Council, given the fact that he is incapable of following state laws with his recent confirmation of bringing his rifle into public. How can someone who is actively inciting violence, breaking the law, and creating fear in our community be able to be on our city council? Bobby Duncan needs to be removed immediately. I haven't forgotten his White Lives Matter Facebook posts and reposts in the past, along with anti-Islamic and anti-immigration rhetoric. People of color don't feel safe in this town knowing he is on our council. He clearly has not learned from the many voices in our community condemning his prior actions, so please hold him accountable and vote him out. Sean Brown. My name is Sean Brown. I'm writing to request a formal inquiry into the Yucaipa PD response to the incident that occurred during the evening of June 1st, 2020 on the Boulevard, and Councilmember Duncan's involvement in said incident, and make the results publicly available. At this event, multiple people were in violation of the California Penal Code 25850 of brandishing loaded firearms in the public space, which has a maximum punishment of 1 year in jail. Councilmember Duncan has also confirmed that he was at the event in which he encouraged other citizens to break this law. This absolutely cannot stand. Our city council cannot have people who are willing to break the law when it suits them while also simultaneously calling for law and order. I will be waiting with anticipation to see the response of both the Yucaipa PD as well as city council's response to this offense. Stephen Hunn. Last year, as the mayor of Yucaipa, Bobby Duncan's poor decision-making an embarrassment to the city. As a result, it led to the creation and approval of the Code of Conduct for all council members. At the time of approval, Mr. Duncan stated that he understood his actions could have negative impact on the community. He stated, "I strive to serve all residents of Yucaipa equally and to the best of my ability." He also added that the Code of Conduct was ridiculous. On Monday, June 1st, 2020, Councilmember Duncan was observed outside of a Yucaipa establishment with a gun next to him. Upon the public discovering the situation, Councilmember Duncan admitted the accusations to be true, stating that his actions were perfectly legal. His reasoning being that the rifle was not his. Clearly, Duncan feels that he is above the law or just doesn't understand that exhibiting a deadly weapon, whether his or not, is a threatening way in front of someone is illegal. That he was admittedly advocating for and supporting vigilantism, say that for me, is, in a word with which he is familiar, ridiculous. The citizens of Yucaipa do not have a problem with the desire to protect our city from perceived threats. We do, however, have a problem with how Councilmember Duncan wants to protect our city, which is illegal and violates the city's code of conduct, which includes modeling a professional manner, serving as a model of leadership and civility to the community, not showing hostility, stirring up bad feelings, and acting in self-righteous manner. I find it ridiculous that a council member obviously didn't bother reading, much less follow the code of conduct that was originally created in response to his own disrespectful and ignorant social media decisions. When the code of conduct was approved, Duncan said that he understood how his actions and decisions could have a negative impact on his community, fellow council members, and the city of Yucaipa staff. But it is very simple to see that he does not and will not understand his decision
Please wrap it up.
to empower and promote vigilante, and I can't say that word tonight. Thank you. And has further deepened the poor perception that the Inland Empire already had of the city of Yucaipa. Brandy Thorley. Dear Bobby Duncan, this is a scary time in our world today. A lot of people are living in fear. Through all this chaos, our town needs to continue to stand together and support you. You have been a part of our community for many years and helped many businesses and residents throughout the city of Yucaipa and Calamasa. I believe this soon shall pass. You have done so much good throughout our community and will continue. Thank you for being a part of those willing to defend our community and stand up for what's right. Some may say this has gotten a little out of hand. You personally and the majority of men and women defending Yucaipa did not. We, the people of this town, need to stick together and stand proud and defend our town and not allow it to become a city that the rioters and looters will be welcome to destroy. We have worked so hard for it. This is our beautiful city of Yucaipa. Thank you. That was Brandy Thorley, sorry. Sierra Alduami, Aldulaimi. I'm writing in regards to the incident that occurred on the evening of June 1st and around Yucaipa Boulevard and the involvement of Councilmember Duncan in said incident. I am first requesting a formal inquiry into the Yucaipa PD's response to the incident and stated above Mr. Duncan's involvement and ask the results be made available to the public. Secondly, I would like to hear clear in stating that Bobby Duncan should be removed as a member of the City Council immediately. Not only has he confirmed that he is the man in the photos from the day opening carrying a rifle. He has showed no remorse and rather complicity and support of the illegal open carrying of firearms in our city. I'm a resident of Yucaipa and have been for over 14 years. And considering Bobby Duncan's recent actions, I have no tolerance to see him continue serving on City Council. Christine Gallagher, I applaud Bobby Duncan for standing up with his community as he always has. He is a business owner and a resident. In fact, I want to vote for him as the next mayor of Yucaipa. Alex Tagart, I have been a proud Yucaipa resident for almost a decade. My children are growing up in Yucaipa public schools, sports teams, and churches, and I myself worked and volunteered in our public schools for over 5 years. I love this town with all my heart, and because I love this town, I will hold my town's leadership responsible for their actions and words, or lack thereof. The events taking place in Yucaipa, uptown Yucaipa for several nights have been deplorable, and I believe that they continue to take place because our leadership's inability to condone a small group of citizens' blatant disregard for the laws that keep our town safe. It still has not been made clear yet by the Yucaipa PD or the city government that the persons seen in multiple photos and videos brandishing rifles in public on the night of June 1st were licensed gun owners, much less allowed to be on top or in front of those businesses because they themselves owned those businesses or were there for lawful purposes as stated in the California Penal Code 26035. What we allow, what we permit. Our city leadership has turned its eye to vigilantism, and therefore sending a message to the Inland Empire that this kind of behavior is condoned here. I ask that the City Council directly and sweepingly address this behavior by issuing a clear public statement that not only declares this behavior illegal, but also reminds citizens of the legal consequences of such behavior. I also ask that our council address our police to actively monitor and police this behavior as it continues to take place night after night in our town, and also implement a task force to review police policy and practices toward minority groups in our town. Lastly, I ask the council to denounce the participation of Duncan in this process. It's widely known in our community that Duncan was part of the group uptown that night. When asked about widely circulated photo of him sitting uptown that evening next to the rifle in public, he told the Daily Bulletin that it was in fact him in the photo and also that he was not even the legal owner of that rifle. It's a Gmail, Lisa Ayala. This request to increase support to our local enforcement and businesses owners so that we have a safer community. James Anderson, due to the multiple threats of violence, looting, and destruction towards our town, many residents and business owners stood outside their business to defend what they had worked so hard for. Bobby Duncan was no exception. He sat outside a business in support and defense of our town. He was not shown holding a weapon. The weapon was sitting near him and belonged to someone else, as he stated. His support for this wonderful town is above and beyond most towns and cities. Our businesses have been safe because our town took a stand and said, we will not stand for the destruction of our homes, businesses, and lives. His support and stance are why our Yucaipa is such a wonderful place to live. Rudy Miranda, please open restrooms, bathrooms. Well, at least you guys are listening. Luz Quinnell, Hello, council members. This public comment is not related to any of the agenda items, but I would like to address the council in regards to events and publicly the city of Yucaipa has received over the last week. The city of Yucaipa is accepting all its citizens and such. The city must develop a robust public relations campaign and have radio ads, social media blasts, etc., to continue to engage the community and celebrate our city. Our city's reputation has suffered and must do everything to repair it. Councilmember Bobby Duncan has destroyed our community with his actions, his words, and most importantly, his status as an elected official. Duncan should apologize to the community for his behavior utilizing his voice as an elected official to intimidate our community. There is a tremendous difference between protecting your private property and intimidating the community. Duncan not only acknowledged that he was protecting his property by using deadly force, but also supported property owners to continue to intimidate the public with carrying their guns in public view. Duncan continues to speak for himself and not represent his community. It is time for council member to resign. The protesters continue to occupy the parking lot at the Yucaipa Bike Shop, further prohibiting the community from purchasing their local community. How did the city allow these businesses to continue to be intimidated by the protesters and further occupy public space? Was the city in agreement with the Yucaipa Bike Shop owners to have militants protecting their businesses? I felt intimidated walking or even driving by the Yucaipa Bike Shop. In closing, I really do hope the city of Yucaipa engages in community, local businesses, Chamber of Commerce, and all of its members of the city of Yucaipa to repair the city's reputation quickly. And the city needs to acknowledge the persistent problem in the city council and address the problem. Jeffrey Connor. I have been a citizen of Yucaipa since birth, attending Yucaipa High School and currently attending Crafton Hills College. I'm writing this out of concern for health, safety, and security of our citizens who wish to engage in their First Amendment rights for peaceful protest, asking for justice of George Floyd and the equality of all persons in America. My wife and I encountered the terrifying situation earlier this week with no knowledge of what was unfolding in our city. As we were driving down Yucaipa Boulevard, we witnessed militarization of citizens on rooftops and witnessed the open carry of weapons in parking lots by individuals who were consuming large amounts of alcohol. As we passed, we heard bragging of how much ammunition one person had used on civilians, racial slurs being hurled, as well as the inviting and inciting of violence. Soon after, we saw the video of the young man who was assaulted by these individuals, where the men recording stating they just beat the ever-loving snot out of 3 or 4 guys. This was followed by Yucaipa ain't the place to be, and you can't come to Yucaipa with this profane language used. The individuals were assaulting the young man for peacefully protesting, and even when there was a slight pause in the assault, the young man responded with, "Justice for Floyd." At the beginning of each meeting, there is a Pledge of Allegiance, and I would like to see and hope to see the pledge and our nation's doctrine upheld: one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. What are we going to do as a city to not just follow in the footsteps of others around us, but set an example for others against violence and racial inequality? What actions are we going to take to ensure there is liberty and justice for all, not just for some? How are we going to develop beyond the hate and racism? And what are we going to do to ensure the safety of our citizens from those who wish to encourage, invite, and commit violence within our city? Last one, Megan Meyer. I was born and raised in Yucaipa. I appreciate Mayor Avila and Lieutenant Brum took time to discuss my concerns with the people taking the law into their own hands. I am asking them to publicly address these events in detail and acknowledging the absurd actions by this MAGA militia. The events of the past week were a glaring stain on this town. Yucaipa PD claims they are unable to do anything about the behavior of these people because they're on private property. Does that mean I can stand in front of my yard waving a gun around while drinking with 50 people? It's private property, so apparently no laws apply. The inaction and silence by the city and Yucaipa PD implies they find this behavior acceptable. People continue to claim Yucaipa isn't racist and we're a good town. People think this past week shouted "All Lives Matter" and racial slurs at peaceful protesters. Even a council member, Bobby Duncan, posts racist things on social media. Yucaipa has a history of racism. If we ignore this and sweep it under the rug, it will only get worse. Let's call the events of this past what they are: ignorant, racist, gun-toting people taking the law into their own hands to intimidate the peaceful protests about racial justice. Bobby Duncan, you ignorant fool, do us a favor and resign. City Council, City Manager, and Mayor, tell these people to follow the law, stop the rumors they are spreading about Antifa and looters, and do better speaking out against hatred in our town. Yucaipa PD has people in their department that are aggressive towards citizens that question their authority and political beliefs, trying to intimidate those that speak up. They do not serve and protect the citizens of Yucaipa. There is a clear bias toward the group of people being vigilantes, got it right, in the name of protecting businesses.
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, there's one more? Okay.
Are there any more? Okay, I've got one more.
One more, uno más, okay?
Okay, Tanya Delgado, your last one. Thank you for being here. You have 2 minutes. If you give your name again and your address.
Yes, Tania Delgado, and I'm not going to give my address because I've already had people say where I've worked and been taking pictures and posting stuff on social media. So I'm a resident of Yucaipa, 20 plus years, but that's as much as I'm going to say as far as that goes. I personally support you, Councilman Duncan, and now I'm publicly wanting to say and express my support for Councilman Duncan. I also want to express my support for our local and our law enforcement in general. Just like not every Black person is a thug or a criminal, not every police officer is bad or a killer or murderer. The events that happen up at the Copper Kettle Cafe, a lot of people really need to stop basing their opinion and their comments on a little snippet of a video that they have seen. I know many of the people that just made comments and emailed in comments were not there that night to see it for their own eyes. They're basing it off of a little short video that was not the events of the whole night. These peaceful protesters, as everybody keeps calling them, were anything but peaceful. They were in and out of that gas station, grocery store, taking candy bars and sodas, and that gentleman was too nervous that runs the store. He was too nervous to say anything, so he just let it slide because he figured my life, my business is not worth a couple candy bars or, sodas. So don't say that they were peaceful. They were not. They came there. They were also yelling out things across the street, throwing water bottles. I don't know if everybody knows this or not, but they also tried to go behind the back of the gas station and set it on fire. And that is when someone crossed the street and tried to say something to them. An older gentleman also was assaulted by these peaceful protesters and had his glasses knocked off. And, there's two sides. Of course, the people from the other side maybe shouldn't have handled it that way. That wasn't a correct way to handle it. But both parties were involved. So let's stop saying that we were up there because we were racist. That's not true. The initial group that was up there, it was not about being racist. It was about protecting our city, protecting our businesses. It's a perfect example of a group of people making a bad name for the whole bunch. And it went on both sides.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Councilmember Duncan, yes.
Since I was the object of a lot of that controversy or discussion, so just for the record, the newspaper never accurately quotes what you say. And when asked about the guns that were there, I said, not all the guns that were there were mine. That's what I said. And then I hear that not one of yes, I had a shotgun there. But let me tell you what I did on Monday. I called Jason Anderson, the district attorney, and I called him 3 times. I got through to him once. And I asked him point blank, I said, what is brandishing a firearm? Because I know that's against the law. And I said, is standing inside or near a business with a gun, brandishing a firearm? He said, not necessarily. He said, only if you pointed at someone and threatened them. That's what the district attorney told me. So that's why I was there. I felt like it was my constitutional right to be there.
Please.
So also, I was there for 4 hours, and all of this discussion about peaceful people, I saw more cars on the boulevard than I've ever seen in my life, and a lot of those cars weren't from town. I saw who was in those cars, and I firmly believe that because of the show of force by the citizens and the police, that's why they didn't do anything more than what happened at the ARCO station. So I got to tell you, folks, I don't regret a thing that I did that night. I'd do it again in a heartbeat.
Please hold your applause.
I believe that there was a credible threat, and I believe they didn't do what they planned to do because they were afraid of what we might do. So that's all I've got to say about that.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and we'll move on to the next agenda item. Thank you very much for all the comments. They're much appreciative and did not fall on false ears, deaf ears.
Excuse me, I have a comment to make too.
Okay, we have one more comment.
And Greg has a comment. You can't speak. So go ahead, Greg. Has Greg got a comment?
Can I?
Greg, go ahead.
Can I address, considering? I agree there was a credible threat. In fact, I actually asked one of our staff members to print out some of the things that were posted, and I could see not just the Uptown, I could just see any business in Yucaipa. And I was, at that same night, I was driving around all over the place. I didn't drive just the Uptown. I drove Outer Highway, I drove the Vons, I drove everywhere because I wanted to see if there were going to be issues. So there really was a credible threat. Now the reaction, that's, I won't go there. There's probably some things that people probably wish they maybe had been a little bit more subdued, but whatever. I had received quite a few emails from individuals, and those who left me their phone number, I've called them back. And actually, a majority of them are very open-minded. They really wanted to sit down and discuss things, but there were also a few that no matter what came out of my mouth, I was a racist and that whole thing. So I obviously didn't get very far with them. So I knew this was going to be kind of an emotional city council meeting, so I did jot down a few things that I believe. I have 6 little items here, or 6 items. And it says, for the record, I believe the death of George Floyd should have never happened, and the police officer should be charged for his death. I personally have not met a single individual who thinks otherwise. I also believe that you have a right to be upset and peaceful protest, and you have the right for peaceful protest for change that needs to occur. I believe you have a right to protest for peaceful purposes. You have peaceful protest. I also know that only a small portion of police officers are bad, and a huge majority are good. I have many police officer friends, and everyone I know is a great guy. And to lump them into one bad is wrong. I also believe people have the right to legally defend themselves and personal property when threatened with acts of violence. And this is in a defensive position only. It should never be offensive. It should be defensive. I also believe those that commit violence against another person or property, those who hit other people, who try to burn things down, should be prosecuted, period. I don't care what side you're on. You hit somebody else, you are the culprit. You are wrong. And I also believe that defining an entire city based on the acts of a few is wrong, and that the residents of Yucaipa are generally good. That's it.
Councilmember Allen.
Yes, I'm sorry. The tensions in here are very high, and I know if you think that we don't have issues or tension in the city of Yucaipa, then you weren't sitting here listening as we all have been for the last hour, almost 2 hours actually now. And I think that we have some work to be done. I moved here in 1988 and have served on the city council since 2004. My heart aches right now. I've watched and listened. I watched them and several different recordings of the events which occurred in the Uptown last Monday night. And I want to tell you that myself, along with many members, and we heard that tonight, are deeply disturbed, shocked, and embarrassed by the events that transpired. No matter what your reasons were, I believe that there are some members of our community who do owe those protesters an apology, and I hope they find the strength and courage to do so. That would start some healing. No matter what you thought their motives were, there are some people that just do owe an apology. I fully support the right to protest. It's essential that the voices of those who feel oppressed are heard. When I was growing up, girls were not allowed to wear pants to school. We weren't allowed to enroll in automotive or shop classes. And I was called many derogatory names when I started working in the construction field in the early 80s. I was told I was taking jobs away from men, that I should go home. That's where women belonged, at home, in high heels with a child in both arms, and that hurt. I was discriminated against because of my gender, but I was not deterred. I was also lucky that I was never physically threatened by others for doing men's work. But sad to say, in the year 2020, there are many in our country, and especially people of color, who do feel threatened and who do not even feel safe driving a car in our communities because of the color of their skin, and this is just wrong. The life, the liberties, and the freedoms I experience should be the life that all experience, regardless of their race, economic income, or religious belief. This is the foundation of our American ideals. This is what the murder of George Floyd has brought to light. That this country has a problem with racism. It's a problem that has to be addressed. We have now experienced over 3 months of extreme financial and health-related issues. It's not been easy. We've been isolated from those we love. And yes, we have seen videos of the violence, the looting, and the destruction that occurred in the days following the murder of George Floyd. I get that the business owners in our community were and perhaps still are feeling threatened and distressed. When you read statements on social media that say, and I quote, "Man, take that shit to Redlands or Yucaipa, where there's a bunch of Trump supporters and racist MFs," how could you not be alarmed or distressed? Especially when rioting and destruction is occurring in our neighboring cities. You know, business owners do have the right to be proactive, and they do have the right to take measures to protect their livelihood. However, the response by some members of the Yucaipa community on the night of June 1st to those statements made on social media, like the one I just read, were unacceptable. Many, if not most, of the protesters who showed up on Monday night and again on Tuesday and Wednesday were not outsiders. They were not Antifa or looters. They were simply Yucaipians who were exercising their right to free speech, a right we must all defend. And they deserve the respect and the support of our community. Shame on those of you who could not find it in your hearts to afford these protesters the fundamental rights granted to them by our Constitution. Also, I hope all this negative chatter about our police stops. I, for one, support and believe the responses of our officers to the events that occurred last Monday were appropriate. The job of our police is to de-escalate situations and to bring about a peaceful resolution. I believe that was achieved. I believe an investigation related to the events that occurred, I know it's ongoing, and I expect we'll receive a full report, and soon. Again, I stand in support of our Yucaipa police. They are members of our community, and they too deserve our respect. I'm requesting that this council be provided a study session led by our captain to educate us on the use of force policy and guidelines currently in use by the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department, as well as the department's position on the 8 procedural rules delineated by Campaign Zero. I also agree with Ms. Roberts, and as such, tonight I would respectfully request that we establish a committee, a diverse committee of representatives to address issues of social inequality, racism, and to better understand the struggles that many in our community are dealing with. We have to have the conversations. You just heard it tonight. We have to have the conversations. No one seems to know how to better understand than by talking what others are experiencing. We must strive to see things from the viewpoints of those who have not been shown the most basic human respect to which all people are entitled in a civil society, so we can implement solutions that will work. If this community is going to get better, if we're going to get healthy, we must talk to each other. I mean, you heard it tonight. We have to talk to each other. We must come together to figure out how we are going to avoid the same types of things, all of that nonsense that has happened, and we've seen it in other communities. We don't want it here. We don't need it here. This is not what Yucaipa is about. We can do better. We, the people, we are responsible for establishing a community of peace and equality, not only for one another, but for our future, for the future generations of those who live here in Yucaipa. Thank you. Thank you all for speaking tonight.
I didn't have anything planned
to say
or
a word.
prepared. Mr. Riddell, go right ahead.
There were some comments made by some of the speakers insinuating that the Copper Kettle was a racist organization or a racist business. There's nothing that could be further from the truth. It all started with this KKK, which means Copper Kettle Catering, and it has nothing to do with the KKK or anything of that sort. They didn't even think of this when they put the sign up. But there's nobody in this town that has done more for the community and the people of this town than the Gray family who own the Copper Kettle. They're the most charitable organization in town. They throw all kinds of charitable things and free dinners and things to raise money for all the different school outfits, and they're constantly helping the community. There's nobody more generous than they are. I've known them for their whole life. Sue Gray, the founder, was a former waitress herself, and she started this business first in a small building up the street and then in the present location. And she's done more for this community than anybody that I know of. She's a former Citizen of the Year and a woman been named a Woman of Distinction by the State Assembly and Senate. And there's not a racist bone in her body. And it's now being run by her daughter, Stacy, and the same thing with her. It's just a wonderful family. I have the highest regard for them. And like I say, I can testify for sure, and I've known them for 35 years, and I've been on the city council for over a quarter of a century, and I've known them very well. And they deserve the accolades that they got by being Citizen of the Year and Woman of Distinction. And there's nobody in this city that has done more for the community than the Copper Kettle and the Gray family. And there's not a non-racist bone in their body. I can attest to that. So I just like to, once again, to quell the rumors that they're in any way racist at all, because nothing could be further from the truth. That's it.
Thank you. As I said earlier, I really had nothing planned or prepared, but everything that most people said here at the dais, it's in my mind. I support this. The tragic death of George Floyd was just unwarranted, and the people involved should be held accountable. We all know that. I also believe that we shouldn't take that incident and assume automatically that all police officers, all police departments are having those kinds of issues. We have a very wonderful police department here, and I don't know of any history of abuse towards minorities, people of color. I do know Minneapolis has had a string of problems throughout the years with their police department, and they're dealing with it in their own way, including dismantling and just disbanding the police department and starting all over again. That's not necessarily the case here. I have been speaking out against it, perhaps not as forcefully as some people would like, but it should be pretty clear that I am not, I understand Black Lives Matter. It does matter, and we should address this. I like the idea that Linda Ross, thank you, Linda, for coming up with a commission or something where we can all bring people together and have a discussion and work our problems or seek solutions to our issues. I don't have much more to say beyond that. Councilmember Riddell clarified Copper Kettle. They are wonderful people. As a Mexican American, I've never felt anything but welcome by the people of Yucaipa ever since I've been here since 1990. I don't share the experience that others say that they have shared, at least not in the streets. I don't always understand this. Maybe I am completely naive. I don't see things. I do admit I'm a very positive person. I'm Pollyanna-ish, if you will. I always look for the bright side of things and not dwell on the negatives. But I think our community will come together. We've had a lot of issues with COVID-19, with our businesses not being shut down and people being cooped up. And then this happens, and this has been a rough 6 months. And I know we will move past this because we are Yucaipa. To help move past this, what I've done is I've asked the local ministers to all get together, and we want to have a candlelight vigil, and hopefully we can have it by Thursday at the community park, at the amphitheater, where all of us as Yucaipians, regardless of what religion you are, we all get together and thank our God for the blessings we have, forgiven us of all of our transgressions, and pray that we reunite again and become one community as Yucaipa is. And while I thought I coined Yucaipa strong, but maybe I didn't. But I really believe that we are a strong people and that we are one. And we will come together. We will get over this. And I'm thankful for the diversity that we have here. And I pray that our diversity will all come together, understand each other, and again, be one Yucaipa. That's it for me. Thank you.
David, what time? What time on Thursday?
I'm sorry, it'll be 8 to 9 o'clock. And go to your churches and ask questions, and just to confirm it. All right. I'm sorry.
PM, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Not in the morning. It's a candlelight vigil. It'll be in the evening, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Mr. Mayor Avila, can I give 15 seconds?
Yes.
I sat in the mayor's position a couple years ago, and I understand the stress that he receives, because a lot of people assume that he's the guy who runs the city. That's just kind of we know that it's the board, but I'm going to commend Mayor Avila. He's had a rough year considering everything, and he's done a fine job. I know it's a tough situation, a tough position to be in, so I want to thank you for your patience and your hard work.
Thank you. Thank you. With thundering applause. Okay, I guess now we can move off of public comment I'm sorry, the evening is, public comment is over. If you have something you want to speak on specifically, you can use there's a consent or a speaker slip over there for a specific item. All right, consent agenda. Is there anything we want to pull from the consent agenda?
For the record, I will abstain or recuse myself from item number 7.
I'll move consent.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Jennifer, we take a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Riddell,
Aye.
Councilmember Bogue,
Aye.
Councilmember Duncan,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen,
Aye.
Mayor Avila.
Yes. All righty, now we move on to the youth advisory is back. Would somebody like to make a motion to revise our agenda? And is it, well, it's actually mayor and council member business.
I think I stated my business and my request, so I think staff heard them, right?
All right, let's do it.
And just for the record, no pending legislation tonight. So.
No pending legislation. Okay. Let's go ahead and move to the, what is it? The Youth Advisory Committee Annual Report. Oh.
At item 10?
Yeah, that's 10.
Yes, item number 10.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am here this evening to give a presentation on the Youth Advisory Committee. So I'd like to ask now that all members of the committee please come up to the podium. The Youth Advisory Committee serves as an advisory board to the City Council. The goal of the committee is to empower youth, and that is exactly what they did this past year. The Youth Advisory Committee was actively involved in volunteering, hosting special events, and giving presentations to the community. They volunteered at Autumn Fest, Winter Fest, and Make a Difference Day. They provided guest information, assisted children with help at the Kids Zone, and provided help for setup and teardown of events. In addition, they hosted the first ever Starry Night Winter Formal at the Yucaipa Performing Arts Center for high school students. The event was extremely successful with 232 attendees. This year, the Youth Advisory Committee also gave multiple presentations at Yucaipa High School to inform students what the Youth Advisory Committee is all about and the importance of volunteering in your community. It is my distinct pleasure and honor to thank members that have served for 2 years from September 2018 to March 2020 or till this evening. I'd like to thank Chairperson London Patriquin, Quinn Benitez, Adelaide Bogue, Angela Fan, and I would also like to thank members that have served 1 year, but they will serve a second year, and I look forward to what we're going to do this next year. So I'd like to thank Allison Shear, Catherine Carrizosa, and Jordan Ferguson. I would also like to introduce London Patriquin, who would like to say a few words on behalf of the committee.
You have 30 seconds. I'm just kidding.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. Today is a sad day for many reasons because we are losing 6 of our most best Youth Advisory Committee members. I personally love serving on the Youth Advisory Committee. I started in December of 2018, or January of 2019, and I feel like I've grown as an individual. I feel like I've learned what public service is. Got to work with Megan. Where'd Megan go? Megan's over there. Ray, Jennifer, and all the members of the council. So I would really like to thank you guys for the opportunity to serve on the council, and I will miss it. Thank you. You guys want to talk?
Anybody else want to say a few words? Of course.
I'll say a quick few words. Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Adelaide Bogue, and I've been a member of the Yucaipa Youth Advisory for 2 years. I just want to say that I'm so grateful for this opportunity. It's been a wonderful time, and it's a wonderful program. I've learned and grown a lot while serving on this committee, and I would like to thank the city for their support in all of our events. They truly impacted the youth of Yucaipa, and will definitely be remembered. So thank you so much, and hopefully the relationship between the Yucaipa Youth Advisory Committee and the City Council will continue, and thank you so much.
All righty, anybody else? One more, at least.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I just wanted to give a big thank you to you guys for supporting us always. Whether it was going on a trip to Sacramento or putting on the first ever winter formal, I want to say it truly feels amazing to feel like I've learned so much and also made an impact on my community, and just have a lot of fun during my term. So again, thank you so much to all of you.
And we thank you for your service.
Hello there. Thank you guys so much for the opportunity to be on the Youth Advisory. I've learned so much from the city and being on the board. This advisory has opened my eyes to all the things that, as youth we can do in our community and do for our town. You have allowed us to take trips to Sacramento and to learn about city government and so much more. Sadly, this is my end of my term, but I'm looking forward to what my other younger members will be able to do as well. So
Thank you.
And that concludes our report. We'd love to have our picture taken with you.
Yes, of course, and their family too. Thank you thank you guys for your things.
Yeah, thank you. Great job this year, in spite of everything.
London Patriquin. Allison. I'm gonna go first names. Jordan. Angela. Catherine. Adelaide. And Quinn.
Does the family want to come up?
We just would like to take some pictures. Hold on, wait, I need to go for it. This is a perfect spot.
Thank you.
One more.
Great job, you guys. Great job.
Thank you. Good luck with everything. Good luck with everything. Always here if you need me. Always here. Good luck. Good luck.
Yeah.
Take a vote on that and see them fire.
I'm sorry?
You need to take a vote to receive them.
Yeah.
Show.
Not sure why we do that, but yeah, that's what we've been doing.
Somebody can Photoshop Riddell's face.
Yeah. So until we get clarification, I think we've consistently of late taken votes on the receive and file, so.
You know,
I'd like to say a word if I could. This is Dick Riddell. I'd like to say a word if I could.
Mr. Riddell, please.
I think we had a very exceptionally good youth advisory committee this year. Unfortunately, due to the coronavirus, their terms were cut short. I know some of them are going away to college and would not be available, but for instance, I think London Patrick, when it didn't get on there till the 1st of 2019, and then he's lost half of 2020. I just wonder if, because their terms were cut short, if any of them wish to serve again, if it'd be wise to give an opportunity to serve another year if they would so like. And that's, maybe that's not shouldn't happen, but I just wonder if that would be a good idea.
I support that idea. I think it's a good idea. 1 extra year.
Are there any that aren't coming back, that want to come back, that can't come back?
Well, I think London is only a junior in high school this year. He'll be a senior this coming year.
We'll make sure to speak to each individual that their term is up and offer them this opportunity.
Okay.
Do we have to modify any of our rules or policies? Okay.
We're all in concurrence? Yep. All right. Okay, this is a receive and file, and one of the things I'd like to do is change up the way that we do receive and files. As you know, I'm a chairperson of the Omnitrans Board of Directors and a board member of SBCTA, and based on my experience in other jurisdictions during my tenure in public service, receive and file was just that. We unless there was something that was pressing that required a vote, the receive and file was simply we acknowledge it and then we just move on. I think it'll save a little time, especially now that we do a roll call vote, and I would strongly ask the dais here, my fellow council members, to consider that receive and files are just that, without vote.
This is Riddell. I'm all for it.
You say he's all.
I know that's the way it's handled in other organizations.
Okay. I'll agree.
Councilmember Allen?
I agree.
Okay. So from this point on, until we change it, receive and files will be without vote. We'll just move forward. Very good. So that was a receive and file.
I like efficiency.
There it is. Going back to mayor and council member business reports, I got a little flustered there because I really wanted to say something. The Omnitrans has put out their, we have a budget now, and it's considerably less than what we've always had. We're shooting for a $88 million budget, which represents about 11% cut in our normal budget, but we're down to 80 million instead of 88 million. And what I'd like to do, it's impacting us in Yucaipa, and what I'd like to have the council consider maybe having a presentation or a study session with Omnitrans explaining how our bus service is going to be working now for a while as a result of not just COVID-19, but the overall downturn of requests for bus service, nationwide. So if you're interested in a study session, it'll be brief. I don't think it'll be too long. And I think it'd be good for us to know and for the public to know exactly what's happening with the future of Omnitrans.
Sounds good.
Okay. That was my mayor and council member business report. Okay, moving on to item number 11, ratification of emergency proclamation and order related to local emergency and regulation of alcoholic beverage possession in public places. Mr. Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'll be brief. This is an item requesting the council ratify the City of Yucaipa Executive Proclamation and Order number 20-03, proclaiming the existence of a local civil emergency and opposing regulations regarding the possession of open alcoholic beverage containers in public places, approved and issued by the Director of Disaster Services on June 2nd, 2020. As council is aware, we had been working on prohibition of alcohol consumption in public places, public rights of way, et cetera. It just hadn't brought it back to council, but the events of June 1st precipitated the emergency proclamation and emergency position of not allowing open alcoholic beverage containers in public places. And the item before you this evening is to ratify that, make that a permanent order, and we will ultimately come back to you with update to the municipal code that includes that. But ratifying it this evening makes it permanent if council so chooses.
Is the public places there, is that public right-of-way?
Public rights-of-way, and it also includes parking lots adjacent to commercial businesses. Not the businesses, obviously, themselves, but parking lots.
And so this has not been an ordinance, or this has not been a rule in the past?
No, it is in most communities, but it has not been in Yucaipa.
And this will make it permanent.
Yes.
I'll move the item.
I'll second it.
That was kind of my position, is I didn't realize that we didn't have it, so.
You know, some things are just never come up, you know, just
I didn't
until
cross
it
my-
hits us in the face. Okay, we have a first and a second. Any further discussion on this? Or any questions of staff besides what we had? Any
So
more?
if you have a can of beer in your hand and you're walking down the sidewalk, that's called an open container, isn't it?
Correct.
That is against the law already, isn't it?
It has not been against our municipal code laws here in Yucaipa until now.
But that is a law of the state of California, right? No? Just driving with an open container, okay, good. Okay,
But
All
you
right.
can't be drunk in public.
can't be drunk in public.
Public intoxication,
is the
which
law,
is different,
yes.
yeah.
That is the law.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's state. All righty, we have a first and a second. Any further discussion on this? Jennifer, take a roll call vote.
Councilmember Riddell,
Aye.
Councilmember Bogue,
Aye.
Councilmember Duncan,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen,
Aye.
Mayor Avila.
Yes. All right, moving on to number 12, ratification of executive order related to local emergency due to COVID-19.
I'd like to pass that on to Benjamin Matlock, if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. As part of the reopening process that's occurring throughout the state as a result of COVID, Phase 2 was approved on May 23rd, 2020, that allowed restaurants to start reopening for a dine-in seating. However, right now, the current requirements due to COVID is to have essentially dine-in seating at a reduced capacity. However, recognizing that sometimes the reduced capacity or the ability to have tables at those businesses can impact the financial success for it, we wanted to think of creative ideas to help allow for greater business activity despite some of these restrictions that remain in place.
That thing looks like a pie or something. You want to eat that? Could I have some water?
Okay. And so as part of it, an executive order was written that temporarily suspends the parking requirements for commercial centers and allows for outdoor dining to be used within certain places within kind of the common areas. So either patio seating or expanding patio seating at existing commercial centers, or even converting parking spaces for outdoor dining so that, one, you can provide the social distancing for tables, to recoup some of the overall restaurant capacity in kind of that place. This process kind of recognized that, one, there may be some patrons that are still concerned with, the spread of COVID at restaurants, and so having the increased social distancing or helping provide opportunities to facilitate that would still be helpful. And then also that as part of COVID and some of the reductions in commercial activity is that there's a lot of parking spaces that are being underutilized and had been underutilized, and so it's using that space to allow people to otherwise wouldn't patronize a restaurant due to their concerns, the ability to do so in a more open environment, and certainly taking advantage of the very nice weather that we have in Yucaipa, especially as we get into the next couple months. And so as part of this, temporary use permit was also developed for a free review and approval through city staff, really looking at just the layout to making sure that as someone creates the outdoor seating area, the layout doesn't create other conflicts within the center and provides for a safe space. And then also some guidelines were established to make sure that those that choose to operate and utilize the temporary use permit have some ideas on how to orient the space to make sure it's safe, but it's a very gives a lot of flexibility for the design and for applicants to work with city staff to implement it, and then as an application that's developed for free of charge as well. So, and it just provides a temporary measure of relief for those businesses, those restaurants and other similar establishments as those reductions for COVID remain in place.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like
Yes.
to say thank you to Mr. Matlock. He put this together in about one day, got it out on the street. We're now finalizing the CDBG applications. We're thinking that some of the restaurants might be able to use the CDBG funding that council has made available. And so that'll go out here in the next day or two. There were some comments from San Bernardino County relative to the application that we're working through. But I just want to publicly thank Ben for putting that together so quickly in the current circumstances.
Very good. Good job, Ben. Any other questions of staff or comments?
How will this affect the previous ordinance that we just approved? In the case of Suvic, they have that little outdoor seating area there. They're going to be, I mean, they have permit from, they have our permission to use that already in public right-of-way. Is that going to be a conflict with the last ordinance that we passed?
No, because that ordinance specifically includes language about unless permitted by the city.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then this actually does establish so let's say Suva does have the encroachment permit for the outdoor dining, but another restaurant establishment, if they do have an existing ABC license in effect, then the requirements for the ABC license would apply for the outdoor dining spaces. Any state requirements would still be adhered to, but the license provisions for that would apply to the outdoor, so they wouldn't necessarily lose that business opportunity with this temporary use permit as well.
And we have updated guidelines that are going to go into effect on Friday as well. We got those in our box today.
Yep, that looks like the state and then the county followed suit with some more opening of
Gyms,
businesses.
bars, museums, and other businesses and activities, but not theaters or performance venues. We
No,
have
that's
any
correct.
clue about those?
Yeah, just that they're in phase 4 and we don't have any insight as to when the governor's going to go to the next phase.
But it seems as though the phases are moving faster.
They are, yes.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed, because it'd be nice to get our performance venue open.
All righty. Councilmember Riddell, do you have any questions or comments?
I'll move the item.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Jennifer?
Councilmember Riddell,
Uh-oh. We lost connectivity.
He might have had some comments. He might be talking right now.
Yeah, Greg, could you make a fast phone call? Can we defer this vote and go on to the next discussion, and that way you can move forward? And is that possible? Is that?
Yeah, the next item does not include a vote based on the decision you just made, so.
Okay. Very good. That'll be number 13. We'll defer the vote for now, and we'll talk about Director of Community Services, Megan Wolf presents the drive-in movies.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. A few council meetings ago, council asked to bring some fun back into our community. And so I am ecstatic to present to you tonight the information on some fun happening in our town. Drive-in movies will occur this Wednesday, June 10th. And the movie that we'll be showing is Maleficent. The movies will take place at 7th Street parking lot. The movie will start at sunset, which is right around 7:30. And it is a first come, first served basis. We have enough spaces for 50 cars, and you pre-register online, and all 50 spots are already taken for June 10th. You'll see the movies on the screen if I can point your attention there, or also in your staff report. We have some new movies that just came out, like Frozen 2 and Toy Story 4. And then we have some old, good old-fashioned feel-good movies like Angels in the Outfield. And participants, when they arrive, they'll be handed instructions and they'll listen to the movie through their radio in their cars. Marketing has been completed for the event and is on the city website as well as on our social media pages. There's no fiscal impact as a result of this item because the item has been budgeted in the fiscal year 1920 budget. This concludes my report, and I can answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you, Megan. Any questions of staff?
No, just yay.
Nothing else?
It's receive and file, right?
Receive and file. Are there, did we talk about, because my mind wandered a little bit while I was looking at that, concessions?
We are working to have a few vendors there. Unfortunately, due to some of the restrictions from COVID-19, one of the problems is getting a food vendor out there, but we're working with a few local restaurants so that they can order through Grubhub, and then the restaurants will know where, or the Grubhub will know where to deliver the items, and we'll have each car marked, so then they'll bring you your Taco Bell to spot 7.
Oh, and how are we going to listen to the movies? Is there a special channel or something on?
Yeah, there's an FM transmitter that we have rented for the evening, and you'll listen to it through your car radio. So
Okay.
however loud or quiet that you want.
All righty. Okay, very good. This is a receive and file. Going back to item number 12, do we have any
If I
information?
may, Mr. Mayor, we also have lost the city attorney on the call. So I don't know if you want to perhaps adjourn for a minute.
So, yeah, why don't we, because we have to have at least the city attorney. Yeah.
It's your
Okay.
call.
What I'd like to do is adjourn for 5 minutes while staff,
Reconnect.
what?
Yeah.
Yeah, just take a fast recess while staff works on getting our important people back. So 5-minute break. Run the vote. Mr. Riddell, did you have any comments on item number 12?
No.
Okay, we're in the process of taking votes. Jennifer, will you start?
Councilmember Riddell,
Aye.
Councilmember Bogue,
Aye.
Councilmember Duncan,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen,
Aye.
Mayor Avila.
Yes. Okay, we talked about number 13. Mr. Riddell, did you hear our comments regarding item number 13, drive-in movies?
No, but I didn't hear your comments, but that's all right. I'll vote for it.
Okay. We're moving on to item number 14 then, draft capital improvement program and pavement management program. And that would be with Fermin Preciado.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. This item is the review of the draft capital improvement program and the draft pavement management program. As you're aware, each year as part of the budget process, staff will present the draft CIP and the draft PMP to City Council for consideration and for further direction. Both the CIP and the PMP document identify the proposed funding sources for these projects and also the funding or the proposed funding allocations for each of the various projects. The draft CIP and the draft PMP, they do also prioritize these projects for council consideration, and that is what is before you tonight. For many years, the city has aggressively pursued the local, state, and federal grant funding and also the partnerships with other agencies to help fund some of these projects, specifically the projects that are multi-beneficial in nature. Included in your agenda report is this graph that is on the screen before you. This graph identifies the various funding sources over the last 18 years for these various projects. And I would like to point out that the state grants, federal grants, and these agency partnerships, they provide a little over 48% of the total funding for all of these projects, which, as you can see on the bottom, the total amount invested over the last 18 years on these capital improvement program projects is about $165 million. As part of the draft CIP, these are the list of projects that will be completed or have been completed the current fiscal year. That includes the 5 PMP sub-programs. You may have noticed over the last couple of weeks, our contractor has been busy rehabilitating and repaving many of our city streets. As far as the drainage facility projects that were completed or will be completed this year, they include the retaining wall along Wilson Creek from 14th Street to the I-10 freeway. This is in support of the hotel project and is included in the development agreement between the city and the developer. And also, we completed the Fremont Street Bridge, or the low water crossing project. For park and public facility projects completed this year, we completed the arena lighting project at the Dottie Potter Arena at the Yucaipa Equestrian Center, a couple of building improvement projects, the community center floor and the interior building improvements, and also the flooring project at the Shear Senior Center and Nutrition Center. Traffic facility and street improvement projects, as you can see on the list before you, there's quite a list of the projects that were completed. I would say one of the larger projects is the Yucaipa Boulevard widening, Phase 1 and Phase 2, which has been completed with the exception of the traffic signal at Chinaberry, which we've been working with Edison to install the meter and hoping to get that meter installed the first week of July so we could activate that traffic signal. Also, we completed Phase 2 of the Yucaipa Boulevard ADA improvement project, or the Uptown Crawl between 2nd and 3rd Street, the County Line Road Avenue H ATP grant-funded project, and several CDBG funded project, including the Uptown ADA parking lot and the alley improvements, which added additional ADA parking and standard parking in the Uptown. For projects that were started this fiscal year and will be completed after July 1st, it includes the Avenue E roundabouts at 2nd and 3rd Street and the sidewalk project, the installation of the traffic signal at Oakland Road and 2nd, and a couple other projects, including the new city yard grading project, which we recently had a bid opening for, and you'll see that item before you at an upcoming meeting. For the projects that are being proposed for prioritization in the upcoming fiscal year in the draft CIP, there's a couple CDBG capital projects. Those are 2 sidewalk projects in the Uptown, one on Avenue A, the other one on Adams Street. We have 4 drainage facility projects, the Wilson 3 Basin project, which you've seen a couple items on your agenda the last few meetings. The Wilson Creek Dunlap Boulevard Bridge Replacement Project, that is a project that will replace the existing Dunlap Boulevard Bridge and increase the capacity of Wilson Creek to reduce the floodplain in the Dunlap area. El Dorado Ranch Park, which is included this year because that is a project that includes the mitigation for a lot of the construction impacts that are caused by many of these projects. And also completing the design of the Wildwood Creek Basin 4 project, which is up at the east end of Wildwood Creek. A couple of the low water crossing projects. Years ago, we had a list of about 6 low water crossings or bridge projects. This year we are down to 2. Pendleton Avenue at Oakland Creek, the design has been completed, and we're working with Caltrans right now to get the federal funding approved so we can go out to bid with that project. And then the Live Oak Canyon Road at Wildwood Creek project, which is just down the street from the I-10 freeway along Live Oak. That project will support the freeway corridor specific plan development, and we plan on initiating the design and engineering for that project in the upcoming fiscal year. The park facility projects, the 13th Street Sports Complex parking lot improvements, you may recall that you approved an agreement or a letter of understanding with the Little League for the city to complete those parking improvements. We finished the design and engineering, and we will be going out to bid soon with that project. The Dunlap Neighborhood Park design has been completed. The environmental review has been completed, which has opened a door for grant funding opportunities, which we are keeping an eye out for. The Wildwood Canyon Mountain Bike Course single track, the design of that project has been completed, and that is actually a part of the Wildwood Creek Basin 4 project that I mentioned earlier, to where the access to the mountain bike course will be part of that Wildwood Creek Basin project. And also Phase 2 of the Oakland Road Neighborhood Park and soccer complex improvements. The improvements to the dirt parking lot at the entrance of Oakland Road, that is something that it's a grant-funded project. We completed the plans and the construction documents for that project and have submitted those to the county for their review, since the improvements will be on their property, and we're looking to bring an agreement between the city and the county before you in the near future for the construction and the maintenance of that parking lot. And we're calling it it's a trailhead parking lot improvement project. And then we also have the annual miscellaneous park capital replacement projects, which is we're proposing $100,000 for these heavy maintenance projects, as we refer to them, which will address some of the maintenance for some of the aging facilities in the city. For public facilities, I've mentioned the city yard relocation, which is part of the Oakland Creek specific plan. That is the project that we recently opened bids for, and we will begin the grading to relocate the city yard. And this exhibit here shows the location of the city yard, which is just south of the Wildwood Calvary Chapel Church on Oakland Road, and it'll be part of the Oakland Creek specific plan development. For the sidewalk projects, the Phase 3 of the Yucaipa Boulevard, 2nd to 5th Street project, we will be applying for several grants to complete the construction of that project. And there's also 3 sidewalk projects that are funded through the Safe Routes to School grant program in the Dunlap area that are in various stages of development. The 12th and 13th Street Improvement Project, that one, the environmental and the design has been completed for that. We're currently working with Caltrans to get the federal funding approved for that project. And the other 2 projects, Avenue E, 13th, the Dunlap Channel, and the ATP project on Avenue E are currently in the design phase. And we plan to complete the design and engineering of those projects in the upcoming fiscal year. This next list is a list of all the traffic facility projects that are being prioritized. It includes the Wildwood Canyon Interchange Project, the County Line Road Interchange Project, the PSR, PR for that, and Phase 3 of the Yucaipa Boulevard project. And it also includes some of the other arterial projects, which include Measure I and traffic facility fee funds. For this year, as referenced in the agenda report, due to the high number of projects that are currently being processed and are in different phases, staff is not recommending any new projects for fiscal year 2021. One of those reasons, again, is this next list identifies the types of project and the cost for the projects that are scheduled for construction over the next 3 years. The drainage facility project list, which includes the Wilson 3 Basin project and one of the low water crossing projects. As you can see, the total estimated construction cost is almost $31 million. And essentially, we have almost a little over $40 million in construction projects, which will be ready for construction within the next 3 years. And right now, we propose to focus our efforts on completing the design, the environmental review, and the other phases of development to bring these projects to construction and be able to go out to bid for these projects. As far as the draft pavement management program, each year the City Council will review the proposed projects. Every 5 years, the city will will hire a consultant to complete the testing and analysis to recalibrate the system. The last time we did that was in 2018, so now we are in the second year of the five-year cycle. And the projects the streets that are being proposed for rehabilitation or resurfacing this year are included in your agenda report. Again, the prioritization of these streets is based on this field testing that is done every 5 years, and also with the taking the average daily traffic or the volume of traffic on within those street segments. This next map shows the streets that were completed in 2019, 2020, in the current fiscal year. Some of these are currently being completed right now. This next map shows the streets that have been completed over the last 5 years, and as you can see, there's quite a number of street segments that are completed throughout the city, or that have been completed throughout the city. The funding for the proposed PMP, this list shows the various sources of funding, and I did want to point out that the general fund contribution of $150,000, that is last year it was $300,000, the year before that it was $200,000, and this reduction in the general fund contribution is due to the recent economic and fiscal constraints. But as you can see on this list, the total amount available for allocation for the next fiscal year is about $2.5 million. And the amount of the allocation that's being proposed for fiscal year 1920 is about $2,255,000, which will leave a projected year-end fund balance of $216,000. For the next fiscal year, this map identifies the streets that are being proposed to be completed in fiscal year 2021. The different colors differentiate between the type of treatment, whether it's a microsurface or a full pulverize and pave or just an edge mill and overlay. And also included in the draft PMP is a map, which is on the screen before you, which shows the proposed streets to be completed over the next 5 years. And again, this is consistent with the testing that was done in 2018 and the prioritization that City Council approved of the 5-year program in 2018. So with that, that concludes my report, and staff is available for questions you may have.
Very good. Any questions of staff? Any comments?
I'll move the item.
We have a motion.
I'll second.
It was a great report, and you've obviously been very busy.
Okay, we have a motion to approve in a second. Any further discussion? Jennifer, take a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Riddell.
Aye.
Councilmember Bogue.
Aye.
Councilmember Duncan.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen.
Aye.
Mayor Avila.
Yes. Okay, we'll go ahead and adjourn City Council.
Am I the chairperson of the, okay, we will
Both.
open this. Both? Okay. So we'll open the successor agency, and our first item is to approve the agency minutes of December 9th.
I'll move.
So moved. I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Jennifer?
Board Member Riddell.
Aye.
Board Member Avila.
Yes.
Board Member Duncan.
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Allen.
Aye.
Chairperson Bogue.
Aye. So now we adjourn the successor agency and open the housing authority. And we have the meeting minutes of May 27th.
Move approval.
Second.
So we have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Jennifer?
Commissioner Riddell.
Aye.
Commissioner Avila.
Yes.
Commissioner Duncan.
Aye.
Vice Chairperson Allen.
Aye.
Chairperson Bogue.
Aye.
Okay, I'll reconvene the City Council. And we have a study session.
And also the successor agency.
We have all three open.
Oh, I have to open, which one did I close? Successor agency.
There you go.
I will open the successor agency.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, members of the authorities. The item before you is our 2020-2021 draft budget. I'm going to be brief because of the lateness of the evening, but I do want to touch on some of the things that we've talked about along the way, just for the public benefit. Council, I know, is very aware. But like many communities, we are experiencing a significant reduction in our sales tax revenues of late with the coronavirus recession, and that follows the public safety budget imbalance that we've been talking about for the last several years, the paramedic costs versus the lack of a CPI in the assessment, fire costs in general going up 5% a year over the next several years. You approved that schedule this evening, where our projected revenues are 2%, maybe just a little over or a little under 2%, given the forecast for sales tax, and also Sheriff's Department costs, again, rising at about 5.5% a year, and our current revenue trajectory anyway at 2% per year. So a combination of those things has required that we really look hard at our budgets this year, as others are as well. We do that anyway, but certainly this year we had to really look hard for those opportunities to try to offset those costs. And I also want to say how much publicly how much I appreciate council's willingness to allow staff some flexibility in reducing the thresholds for the unassigned fund balance amount, committed unassigned fund balance amounts from 30% to 20%. And we certainly are going to need some of that to cover the costs of the fire side of the general fund budget. We believe, as I've said in the last several budget study sessions, that we are able to cover our costs for this fiscal year without touching the fund balance, but it is very close. And so some of that will depend on some of our estimates and estimated actuals and how it ends up at the end of the year. So the one item I wanted to point out, and you'll see it in the PowerPoint when we go through the PowerPoint, we have historically prepaid our unfunded liability that were resulting from the PERS decision to change the discount from the previous net fiscal year's revenues. And so that's how our budget is structured this year, but that one's going to be a little tight, and we'll know more by the next the final budget report when we come to you in June, later this month in June. With respect to the fire fund budget, as you may recall, the initial estimates were in the $1.4, $1.5 million range in terms of expenses exceeding revenues. We went through a series of discussions. You went through a series of discussions in budget study sessions, gave staff direction on a couple of fronts. One was to delay the purchase of our next fire engine by a total of 3 years, saving the allocation that we have been making for a number of years at $100,000, a little over $100,000 a year in some years, for 3 years, using that to help offset the cost of fire and paramedic service this year, and using an estimate for the actual cost for salaries and benefits as opposed to how we have normally budgeted, which is at top step. With CAL FIRE contract, we pay based on the actual cost versus the top step. And so taking that savings, if you will, at the front end of the budget versus at the end of the year is a way of reducing that amount as well going into this fiscal year budget. And then finally, some quarter person admin costs to support fire. We were directed to reduce that or eliminate that as well. And so all of those efforts resulted in a net requirement of fund balance for the fire and paramedic services in the amount of $735,941. With that, I'll go through the PowerPoint very quick. We just kept it very short, given the knowing we would have quite a bit of public comment this evening. So happy to.
Ray, where was that picture taken? Yeah, where was that?
Oh, when was it taken?
Where?
Oh, where? Oh, Flag Hill.
That's very nice. Thank you.
Yeah. And so we don't have some of the graphs and charts that you've seen over the years in terms of fund balance, but this year is probably that's not as much of a focus in terms of monitoring that and maintaining that threshold. So we'll be happy to come back to you with some of those charts and graphs if you like. But you've seen these before, the general fund revenue pie chart, where those funds come from, and the amount that matches your draft budget. Go ahead. And then, of course, the expenses and the amounts that are in your draft budget as well. This is not including fire, by the way. This is, but does include police services. Go ahead. And then your summary, and as I mentioned earlier, the general fund side of the budget, the non-fire general fund side of the budget is balanced with a lot of help from folks in your departments. Working on things like materials and consulting costs, temporary costs, cutting a lot of those things and freezing those 6 positions that we talked about in several budget study sessions, 2 in Public Works, 2 in, or 1 in Finance, 1 in Planning, and a couple in Community Services. And with those changes, we are presenting you this evening a balanced budget on that side, and again, use of some fire fund balance on the fire side, with the understanding that the payment of unfunded actuarial liabilities, that 15-year approach, may require net revenues from last fiscal year or getting into the fund balance a little bit. We'll know a little bit more by the next meeting that we present the final budget to you. I won't go into a lot more detail, but happy to answer any questions. If you have comments throughout the budget document that you want to just transmit to staff, we can certainly take those and are doing our final edits. If you have substantive questions, concerns, issues, I am available to answer questions, and Ryan, our new finance manager that you were introduced to tonight, is also available. I think he's still here. Yeah, hi. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
And Ray,
Thank you,
just
Ray.
for
Any questions of
oh,
staff?
Sorry, just to remind me, when is the final budget going to come forward to us? Just so I have a
meeting,
time frame.
June 22nd.
Okay, so because this was a lot to digest
Yes.
in 3 days, so we have some time. Then.
Yes.
Okay.
Councilmember Riddell.
Yeah, this is, like I said today in our discussion, Ray, on the non-department items, you're going to list the things that we budget that you said it's included, but they aren't itemized, such as what we give to the chamber and spay and neuter program and Veterans Day and 4th of July, which may not be on there this year, and interfaith community support, and these things that are directly budgeted, you're going to include those itemized in the when you come back next with the final budget?
Yeah, absolutely. If that's the concurrence of the city council, we'll make sure that's in the final document, and that falls in the non-department and city council budgets.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that.
Okay, and where do you list the in the budget? I couldn't find where you list the emergency fund. Where's it listed? The rainy day fund.
Meant the contingency. The rainy day fund is just listed in the group of fund balances. You've seen that in the charts, and then there's a summary page of the fund balances in the budget as well. I'll get you that page number.
Okay.
At 19?
It's page 23. There's a bunch of footnotes on the fund balance listing that includes reference to those numbers.
Page 23?
Yes.
Just a second.
And that falls under the unassigned fund balance and the miscellaneous. I guess it'd be the miscellaneous fund balance.
In this small print down at the bottom somewhere?
Yeah, item L talks about the 20% to 30%. It falls under miscellaneous fund balance. I'm not seeing it listed specifically in the footnotes, but it's part of that 7.695 million or 7.317 million in 2020 miscellaneous fund balance. We can add that footnote if you like. I'm not seeing it right now.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I'd like to know how much.
Sure.
It doesn't show in the summary, the general fund summary.
No, it just shows in this section where you have the fund balances, but we can add that as one of the footnotes, that rainy day fund. I don't see it listed here.
Yeah, I'd like to know what it was and what it's cut to.
Yeah, it looks like it's part of G, but we'll add the number itself.
Okay, good. That's it. If you list those items on the non-department thing, so there's no confusion, so we know exactly where it's going. They used to be on CDBG, but then they're directly funded now. So if they're listed, that would be good.
Okay, any other comments?
We talked about that this morning.
Understood.
It all looks good to me.
I'm sorry, what's?
Looks good.
Yeah, looks good. Anything?
That's a good budget.
I don't have anything else.
All right, so you have a little bit of marching order there to kind
And
of clean
good
some
job.
things up.
Good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
very comprehensive, as always. All right, if,
So
we're-
I can adjourn the successor agency and the housing authority at this time?
good job, thank you.
Okay.
All right, so we're done with that. Any announcements? Hearing none,
Go to the movies?
go to the movies. Are we tired? Anybody brain tired? Okay, if that's it, folks, thank you very much for those who stuck it out, Linda. And you guys have a great evening. This meeting is adjourned.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dick.